Have you ever noticed that climbing stairs feels harder than it used to? Or maybe getting up from a chair takes a little more effort these days? You're not alone. Many people start to feel their legs aren't as strong as they once were as they get older. But here's the thing. Weak legs aren't just a normal part of aging. They're a warning sign that your mobility and independence could be at risk. It's easy to ignore these subtle changes, thinking it's just getting old. But these early signs could mean trouble ahead if left unchecked. The good news is, it doesn't have to stay this way. In this video, we'll uncover the surprising reasons why your legs weaken first and share simple, affordable ways to reverse the process. Whether you want to stay active, prevent falls, or just feel more confident moving around, this video is made for you. Stick with me because by the end, you'll discover 3 powerful foods that can help you strengthen your legs, improve your balance, and boost your overall health, making it easier to enjoy life on your terms for years to come. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. It often happens so quietly that you barely notice at first. Maybe you're out in the yard, pulling a few stubborn weeds, and suddenly you realize that standing back up takes more effort than it used to. Or you're walking up the stairs, something you've done thousands of times before, but now you pause halfway, feeling your legs grow heavy, your breath coming a little shorter. These aren't just isolated incidents. They're the subtle beginnings of a story that nearly everyone faces as they get older. If you've experienced moments like these, you're certainly not alone, and there's a scientific reason behind them, one that affects millions of older Americans every year. As we age, our bodies go through countless changes. Some are obvious, others sneak up on us quietly over the years. One of the most significant, yet least talked about, is a process called sarcopenia. The word might sound complicated, but its impact is anything but. Sarcopenia refers to the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength that naturally occurs as we grow older. While it's tempting to think this only happens in our later years, the truth is, the process often begins much earlier than most people realize. By the time you reach your 40s, your body has already started to lose muscle. At first, at a slow and steady pace, but that pace quickens the older you get. Let's break this down a bit further. Scientists have found that after the age of 40, the average person loses about 1% of their muscle mass every single year. At first, this might not sound like much. What's 1%, anyway? But the effects accumulate quietly and persistently. By the time you hit 60, that rate can double, leading to noticeable changes in your strength and mobility. For someone who once moved effortlessly, chasing after grandchildren, gardening, dancing at family gatherings, these changes can feel both confusing and frustrating. It isn't just about the number on the scale or the way your clothes fit. It's about the freedom to move through life without hesitation or fear. Now, you might wonder why the legs, in particular, seem to bear the brunt of this muscle loss. The answer lies in both their size and their importance. The muscles in your legs are the largest and most powerful in your entire body. They support you every time you stand, walk, rise from a chair, or climb the stairs. Unlike your arms or core muscles, which get breaks throughout the day, your leg muscles are constantly at work, serving as the foundation for nearly every movement you make. Imagine your body as a sturdy old house. The legs are the beams and pillars that keep everything upright. When those beams weaken, the whole structure feels less stable. This constant use means that as your body begins to withdraw muscle strength, so to speak, the legs are the first place you'll notice the deficit. When you were younger, your muscles were like a healthy savings account. Strong, resilient, and able to take on new challenges. But with age, your body slowly dips into those reserves, taking out more than it puts in. The withdrawals start to show, especially in your legs, long before other areas. The earliest signs of leg weakness are often so subtle, you may write them off as just one of those days. Maybe your legs feel a bit heavier after a trip to the grocery store, or you find yourself using the handrail for a little extra support going up the stairs. Perhaps it's a touch of fatigue after standing in the kitchen cooking a holiday meal, or a slight wobble when you get up quickly from the sofa. Over time, these little moments add up, quietly changing the way you move through your world. As sarcopenia progresses, the signs become harder to ignore. Gardening, which once brought you joy and a sense of accomplishment, might start feeling like hard labor. Walking around the block with friends or keeping up with energetic grandchildren could leave your legs aching and tired. Some folks begin to plan their days around avoiding too many steps or activities that require standing for long periods. Others might start skipping their favorite dance class or saying no to outings that involve uneven terrain or stairs. Each small adjustment, each quiet retreat, can feel like a little piece of independence slipping away. But the real concern with leg weakness goes beyond tired muscles or everyday inconvenience. Weak leg muscles dramatically increase the risk of falls, which are a leading cause of serious injury among Americans over 65. Every year, millions of older adults in the United States suffer a fall, and the consequences can be life-altering. Even a seemingly minor fall can result in broken bones, especially hips or legs, long hospital stays, and months of painful rehabilitation. For many, a single fall can mark the beginning of a permanent loss of mobility, independence, or even life-threatening complications. Falls are the #1 cause of injury-related deaths among older adults. It's a sobering reality, but it deserves our full attention. The fear of falling can be just as powerful as the physical risk itself. Some people start to avoid physical activity altogether, afraid that one wrong step could spell disaster. Unfortunately, this only makes the situation worse. When you stop using your muscles, the loss accelerates, strength and flexibility dwindle, and the ability to recover from stumbles shrinks even further. It becomes a vicious cycle. The weaker your legs become, the more likely you are to fall, and the less you feel able or willing to move. Your world starts to shrink, room by room, activity by activity. But knowledge, as they say, is power. Understanding why this happens, and how early signs appear, can empower you to take action before things reach a critical point. For many people, the very first clue is simply a change in how movement feels. Tasks that were once second nature now take a bit more concentration. Getting out of a low chair might require a few tries or an extra push with your arms. Bending over to pick up the newspaper or a grandchild might be followed by a hesitant pause, checking for balance before straightening back up. These little hesitations are your body's way of warning you. It's time to pay attention. Another early warning sign is a decrease in balance. Maybe you've started to notice a slight unsteadiness, especially when turning around quickly or reaching for something overhead. Sometimes it's a matter of catching yourself against the kitchen counter or gripping the banister a little tighter than you used to. Maybe you realize you're holding onto furniture as you move through the living room, or you find yourself planting your feet carefully before stepping off a curb. Cramps and muscle soreness after minimal activity are also common. What used to be a pleasant stroll around the block now leaves your calves tight and uncomfortable. Climbing a few stairs, once an afterthought, can now trigger aches that linger. These signals may be mild at first, but they often become more pronounced if left unaddressed. Some folks start to shuffle their feet, taking shorter steps to compensate for the sense of weakness, which can increase the risk of tripping. It's important to remember that this journey is not the same for everyone. Genetics, overall health, physical activity levels, and diet all play a role in how quickly or slowly sarcopenia progresses. Some people manage to stay spry and agile well into their 70s and 80s, while others feel the effects much earlier. But no matter where you are on this path, it's never too late to make changes that can help preserve and even rebuild muscle strength. Recognizing the early signs of leg weakness is the first step. The next, and perhaps the most important, is understanding that you have the power to change the story. There are steps you can take to slow down, stop, or even reverse muscle loss and regain confidence in your movement. It starts with simple awareness and a commitment to take action, not just for your legs, but for your freedom and quality of life. The consequences of ignoring weak legs go beyond the physical. It affects your independence, your social life, and your ability to do the things you love. But you don't have to accept it as an inevitable part of aging. By understanding the science of sarcopenia, recognizing the warning signs, and taking practical steps to address them, you're investing in many more years of mobility, confidence, and joy. In the next section, we'll talk about simple, proven ways to fight back against muscle loss, starting with the food you put on your plate each day. But for now, take a moment to listen to your body. Think about the way your legs feel after a busy day, and remember, you have more control than you might think, and it's never too late to take that first step toward strength and independence. 1. Fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. As Margaret sat on the edge of her bed that gray February morning, she gazed down at her legs, tracing the faint blue veins that seemed a little more pronounced with every passing year. Her slippers were a soft, worn pair, bought years ago when walking down her front steps had been effortless and grocery trips were part of her weekly routine. But lately, every time she reached the top of her staircase, she'd pause, gripping the handrail, almost surprised by how tired her legs felt. Even getting up from her favorite armchair seemed to take a moment longer. Margaret was not alone in feeling this change, though sometimes it felt that way. Her friends mentioned it too, in small ways. How the hike up from the parking lot seemed steeper, how gardening left their knees sore, how the grandkids' games of tag now felt like a distant memory. It was easy to chalk it up to just getting older, until the day Margaret nearly stumbled getting out of her bathtub. That night, fear replaced her usual stubborn independence. She realized something had to change. The next day, she visited her doctor. After a careful exam and some gentle questions, the doctor brought up the word sarcopenia. Margaret had never heard of it before. The explanation was simple. As we age, we naturally lose muscle mass, especially in our legs, making simple activities harder and increasing the risk of falls. Margaret asked, "What can I do about it? Am I just stuck getting weaker?" Her doctor smiled, shook her head, and replied, "Not at all. There are real things you can do, starting with what's on your plate." Margaret had always believed food was just for enjoyment or managing her waistline. Now, she realized it could be her first defense in reclaiming strength. The doctor handed her a sheet listing foods that were particularly powerful for muscle health, and right at the top were fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines. Margaret blinked. Fish. She'd never really been a fan. Her memories of fish were Friday nights in her childhood, the kitchen heavy with the smell of fried perch, or the canned tuna salad she made for picnics. She'd never thought of it as something that could give her legs the power to climb her stairs with confidence again. That weekend, Margaret sat at her kitchen table, reading articles and listening to health podcasts about the power of fatty fish. The science was surprisingly clear and persuasive. Unlike many trendy superfoods, the benefits of fatty fish for seniors were backed by decades of research. Fatty fish are packed with omega-3 fatty acids, the kind of fat your body can't make on its own, but desperately needs. These good fats aren't like the ones you try to cut out of your diet. They help protect your heart, soothe joint aches, and most importantly for Margaret, keep muscles strong and healthy. She learned that omega-3s work like oil in a car engine, keeping everything running smoothly and helping reduce the inflammation that builds up in muscles and joints over time. For someone like Margaret, who sometimes woke up with stiff knees and ankles, this sounded like a miracle. But it was more than just comfort. Omega-3s also supported muscle recovery and repair, meaning that every walk, every climb, every attempt to strengthen her legs would pay off faster if her diet gave her body what it needed to rebuild. The more Margaret learned, the more determined she became to try something new. The next time she visited the grocery store, she skipped the freezer aisle and headed to the fish counter. The bright fillets of salmon caught her eye, vivid orange, glistening on ice. The fishmonger recommended a fresh, wild-caught piece, explaining that it was high in both protein and omega-3s. Margaret hesitated, worried it might be hard to prepare, but she found a recipe online for simple oven-baked salmon with just olive oil, lemon, and dill. That night, her kitchen filled with a fresh, gentle aroma, and she felt a little thrill at doing something positive for her body. Salmon quickly became Margaret's favorite, not only for the taste but for how easy it was to include in her meals. Once a week, she'd make a point of picking up a fillet, baking it for dinner, and saving the leftovers to flake over a salad the next day. When she wanted a faster option, she turned to canned salmon or tuna, learning that the nutritional value was nearly identical to fresh, but at a lower price and with zero fuss. She kept a couple of cans in her pantry for days when she felt tired or didn't want to cook. But it wasn't just salmon. She tried mackerel, smaller, richer, and even higher in omega-3s. Mackerel reminded her of the smoked fish her father once brought home from the market, and soon, she was making easy lunches of mackerel on whole grain toast with a squeeze of lemon and a sprinkle of pepper. On days when she wanted a quick snack, she'd reach for sardines, tiny but mighty, packed in olive oil and perfect with whole wheat crackers. As weeks turned into months, Margaret began to notice changes that were subtle but encouraging. She woke up with less stiffness in her knees. She felt steadier getting in and out of her car, less wobbly on her daily walks around the block. By summer, she found herself volunteering to help at the community garden again, bending, kneeling, and carrying watering cans with a confidence she thought she'd lost. Even her friends noticed. "You seem more energetic lately, Margaret," they'd say. She'd just smile and tell them about her fish story, how adding salmon and mackerel to her meals made a bigger difference than she ever expected. Behind her success were real, measurable benefits. Fatty fish are not just about omega-3s, though those are crucial. Each serving of salmon, mackerel, or sardines is also a powerhouse of protein, the building block for every muscle fiber in your body. As her doctor explained, every time Margaret climbed the stairs or went for a walk, her muscles formed tiny microtears, a normal part of growing stronger. Protein from fish gave her body the raw materials to repair those tears, making her muscles not just heal, but grow back even stronger. Margaret also discovered another key benefit: vitamin D. As many older Americans know, vitamin D becomes harder for our bodies to absorb from sunlight as we age, especially in winter. But a single serving of fatty fish delivers a healthy dose of vitamin D, which works with calcium to keep bones strong and reduce the risk of fractures. For Margaret, who sometimes worried about her thinning bones, it was comforting to know her new habits were helping her from the inside out. Not every meal had to be fancy. Margaret enjoyed mixing up her fish dishes, sometimes tossing salmon into a spinach salad with walnuts and cranberries, other times spreading mashed sardines onto rye crackers for a quick bite before heading to her book club. She discovered that fatty fish paired well with a variety of flavors: a little garlic, some fresh herbs, a dab of mustard, or even just a squeeze of fresh lemon. As her confidence grew in the kitchen, so did her interest in keeping up her new routine. Some of her friends worried about the cost of fresh fish, but Margaret reassured them. Canned options were affordable and lasted for months in the pantry, with nearly all the same benefits. When one neighbor complained about the fishy taste, Margaret suggested trying salmon cakes or mackerel patties, recipes that blended the fish with herbs, breadcrumbs, and eggs for a milder flavor and hearty texture. Even the grandkids loved her salmon patties, asking for seconds when they came to visit. For those who truly couldn't stand fish, Margaret learned about plant-based alternatives, like walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds, which also offer omega-3s, though not quite the same kind. Still, they were a great addition to her morning oatmeal or yogurt, especially on days when she skipped the fish. She even tried a high-quality fish oil supplement after talking with her doctor to make sure she met her weekly omega-3 needs. As the months rolled on, Margaret kept track of her progress. She noted how her stamina improved, how her balance felt steadier, and how her hands seemed to respond better to gentle exercise. Her doctor was delighted at her next checkup, not just with Margaret's numbers, but with her renewed enthusiasm for life. "It's amazing what the right foods can do," the doctor said, and Margaret agreed. It was never just about food. It was about reclaiming the simple joys of moving freely, keeping up with family, and living without fear. Looking back, Margaret realized that one small change, adding fatty fish to her meals just 2 or 3 times a week, had sparked a chain reaction. She slept better. She felt more motivated to take daily walks. She even rejoined her old line dancing group at the local rec center. The stairs at home, once a source of anxiety, became just another part of her day. If there was a single lesson Margaret wished she could share with everyone her age, it was this: don't underestimate the power of the foods you choose, even late in life. The right choices can rebuild strength, renew confidence, and open doors you thought were closed. For her, it started with a piece of salmon and a promise to herself to never give up on her independence. And so, as the sun set on another day, Margaret looked forward to dinner, not just as a meal, but as a celebration of what her body could still do, and all the years still ahead of her. With every bite of her favorite baked salmon, she felt not just nourished, but empowered, stronger in body and in spirit than she'd felt in years. 2. Dairy products: milk, yogurt, cheese. Margaret never used to think much about dairy. She grew up in a small town where a glass of milk at dinner was just part of life, and cheese meant a slice of cheddar on her sandwich or the shredded mozzarella that crowned Sunday's lasagna. But as she got older, her relationship with food changed, and so did her body. Her legs didn't feel as strong as they used to. She could still climb the porch steps, but sometimes she'd pause halfway, feeling her knees tremble, her muscles just a little slower to respond than before. She worried about her independence, especially after learning that falls were a leading cause of injury among seniors. So when her doctor suggested she take a closer look at her daily meals, Margaret started paying attention to things she'd always taken for granted, like that glass of milk. She learned that dairy products aren't just comforting or delicious. They're essential allies in the battle against age-related muscle loss and bone weakness. It turns out, as the years pass, the very nutrients that keep our legs sturdy become more important than ever. Every time Margaret stood up from her favorite recliner, walked down her driveway, or reached for a bag of groceries, her body relied on a team of nutrients working behind the scenes: protein to build and repair muscle, and calcium to keep her bones dense and resilient. Dairy products are among the richest, most accessible sources of both. Margaret decided to make her kitchen a laboratory for better aging. She began her mornings with a simple ritual: a tall glass of milk, cold and refreshing, sometimes with a slice of toast or a handful of berries. She was surprised to learn that just 1 glass of milk could deliver 8 grams of high-quality protein, the kind her body could use right away to repair and rebuild the muscle tissue she was working so hard to preserve. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. She read that as we age, our bodies become less efficient at both building muscle and absorbing calcium. By the time we reach our 70s, muscle loss can accelerate rapidly if we don't get enough protein each day. Margaret was determined not to let that happen. She started adding Greek yogurt to her breakfasts a few times a week, discovering it packed a whopping 15 or even 20 grams of protein per serving, twice as much as regular yogurt. Sometimes she'd top her bowl with walnuts and a drizzle of honey. Sometimes she'd swirl in a spoonful of berries and granola for crunch. Not only did her breakfast taste better, but she felt fuller and more energetic throughout the morning. Of course, dairy's magic isn't limited to muscles. Calcium is just as important for anyone wanting to stay active and independent. Our bones are living tissue, constantly breaking down and rebuilding. For older adults, especially women after menopause, bone density can drop dramatically. Margaret remembered a friend from church, Alice, who broke her hip in a minor fall and spent months in rehab, struggling to get back the freedom she'd lost. The thought haunted Margaret. She knew she wanted to do everything possible to avoid that fate. One afternoon, Margaret attended a local health fair where a dietitian talked about building a bone bank for the future. The message was simple. Every serving of milk, yogurt, or cheese is like depositing into that bank, helping strengthen bones now to prevent breaks later. Dairy isn't just high in calcium. It's also one of the best ways for the body to absorb that calcium. Margaret learned that certain plant-based sources, while healthy, don't offer the same bioavailability, meaning the body can't use the calcium as efficiently. She was amazed at how easy it was to work more dairy into her meals. For lunch, she'd often enjoy a bowl of cottage cheese with sliced peaches, or a string cheese with apple slices. Sometimes she'd melt a slice of Swiss or provolone over her turkey sandwich. For dinner, she started experimenting with simple homemade soups, broccoli and cheddar, creamy tomato with a swirl of milk, each one adding another layer of nourishment to her routine. When she baked casseroles, she'd add a little extra shredded cheese on top, savoring the way it bubbled and browned in the oven. And Margaret's not alone. Around her community, more seniors were learning the importance of dairy for strong legs and bones. At her weekly exercise class, the instructor often reminded the group that every squat, every step, every stretch is powered by muscle, and muscles need protein. The group would share tips after class. Which brands of yogurt tasted best, which cheeses worked in salads, and who had found lactose-free options that didn't upset their stomach. Because not everyone tolerates dairy the same way, Margaret was glad to discover there were alternatives. One of her friends preferred lactose-free milk, which tastes much like regular milk but is gentler on sensitive stomachs. Others used fortified plant-based milks, like almond, soy, or oat milk, making sure to check the label for added calcium and vitamin D. She even found lactose-free yogurts and hard cheeses, which are naturally lower in lactose. As the weeks passed, Margaret found herself feeling steadier on her feet. She could walk farther, stand longer, and didn't feel quite so wobbly after gardening or sweeping her porch. At her annual checkup, her doctor smiled at the improvement in her bone density scan and muscle tone. "Keep doing what you're doing," the doctor said. "You're adding years of strong, independent living." It wasn't all science and numbers, though. Dairy brought Margaret joy in other ways, too. When her grandchildren came to visit, they'd bake together. Cheesy muffins, gooey grilled cheese sandwiches, yogurt parfaits with fresh berries. Food was about family and memories, not just nutrition. The laughter around her kitchen table, the clink of spoons and bowls, and the smiles over shared meals became as important to her well-being as any vitamin or supplement. She also rediscovered old favorites, like a classic American milkshake, made with real milk and a scoop of ice cream, savored on a hot summer day, or a cheese plate shared with friends, featuring sharp cheddar, creamy brie, and a few crackers and grapes. These small pleasures reminded Margaret that eating well isn't about deprivation, but about choosing foods that fuel your body and spirit alike. For those who found it hard to remember to eat enough protein, Margaret kept a simple tip in mind. Try to include a source of dairy at each meal. She'd keep single-serving yogurts in her fridge for quick snacks, buy pre-portioned cheese sticks for on the go, and make sure there was always a quart of milk ready for her morning coffee or oatmeal. Too much cheese or whole milk can indeed be high in saturated fat, so Margaret balanced things out. She often chose low-fat or part-skim options and read labels to keep portions sensible. But she never cut out dairy entirely. She knew the risks of osteoporosis, muscle loss, and frailty were far more dangerous than the occasional extra calorie. Perhaps most importantly, Margaret learned that no single food, no magic pill, could keep her legs strong all by itself. Dairy was just one part of a bigger picture, along with regular walks, gentle stretches, and a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. But it was a powerful part, one that fit her tastes and lifestyle. Over time, she became an ambassador for strong bones and muscles, gently nudging her friends to enjoy an extra slice of cheese or pour a little more milk over their cereal. She shared recipes, hosted yogurt tasting parties, and celebrated each small victory. Standing up a little easier, walking a little further, living with a little more confidence and a lot less fear. Looking back, Margaret realized she had never appreciated the humble glass of milk, the simple cube of cheese, or the bowl of creamy yogurt nearly enough. Now, she saw them for what they were, tools for living well, for holding on to the freedom that meant most to her. Each morning, as she watched the sunrise over her backyard, Margaret would lift her mug of coffee, swirled with a splash of milk, and smile, knowing that with every thoughtful choice, she was nourishing her legs, her bones, and her future. In her heart, she understood that aging might bring new challenges, but she was determined to face them with strength, one step, one meal, and one glass at a time. 3. Leafy green vegetables, spinach, kale, arugula. Margaret had always loved the sight of her garden, especially as spring arrived and green shoots poked up from the dark soil. Her backyard, once wild and unkempt, had become a patchwork of raised beds filled with tomatoes, squash, and a riot of green leafy vegetables. She remembered, as a young woman, watching her mother toss a handful of spinach into a pot of chicken soup or serve fresh lettuce salads straight from the yard. Those memories lingered as she aged, but it wasn't until her legs began to feel unsteady that Margaret truly understood the magic of leafy greens. For years, Margaret, like so many of her friends, believed that vegetables were mostly good for keeping you regular or helping you lose weight. The real surprise came when she started reading about how certain greens could help keep her legs strong, her balance steady, and her independence intact. As her doctor explained, vegetables like spinach, kale, and arugula aren't just side dishes. They're nutritional powerhouses, packed with exactly the nutrients seniors need to move with confidence and age with grace. The science made sense, even if it felt a little surprising at first. Margaret learned that leafy green vegetables are loaded with vitamins and minerals essential for muscle and bone health, especially 3 nutrients most older adults simply don't get enough of: vitamin K, magnesium, and potassium. She discovered that vitamin K, found in abundance in kale and collard greens, played a starring role in building and maintaining strong bones. For years, Margaret had worried about bone loss. Her mother had broken a hip after a small stumble, and the memory of her recovery stayed with Margaret. Her doctor explained that, as we age, our bones naturally lose density, making us more vulnerable to fractures. What Margaret hadn't known was that vitamin K acts like a traffic cop, helping direct calcium right into the bones where it's needed most. Without enough vitamin K, even a calcium-rich diet can leave bones brittle. Spinach became one of Margaret's new favorites. It was easy to toss a couple of handfuls into her morning omelet or blend it into a fruit smoothie for breakfast. She learned that spinach isn't just rich in vitamin K. It's also a good source of magnesium, another nutrient critical for muscle function. When Margaret was younger, muscle cramps were the kind of thing she'd laugh off after a long walk. But now, they sometimes woke her at night, sharp pains pulling her from sleep and leaving her legs sore in the morning. Her research showed that magnesium helps muscles relax and recover after activity, preventing those dreaded nighttime cramps and helping her legs feel less stiff when she first got out of bed. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Margaret also began paying attention to potassium, found in both spinach and arugula, but especially high in beet greens and Swiss chard. She learned that potassium acts as a key electrolyte in the body, balancing fluids and making sure nerves and muscles work together smoothly. Low potassium can make muscles feel weak or tired, and can even contribute to high blood pressure, a common concern for many of Margaret's friends. By including a variety of leafy greens in her diet, Margaret gave her body a steady supply of this essential mineral, helping her feel stronger and more energetic. But nutrition was only part of the story. Margaret soon realized that the act of preparing and eating leafy greens became a joyful ritual, connecting her to her past and her community. She visited the local farmers market each Saturday, chatting with growers about the best way to sauté kale or how to make a zesty arugula salad. She started swapping recipes with her neighbors. Simple dishes like massaged kale with lemon and olive oil, or baby spinach with strawberries and toasted walnuts. She even made greens a family affair. When her grandchildren visited, she'd invite them to pick leaves from the garden, teaching them to tell the difference between spinach, chard, and the peppery bite of arugula. They'd rinse the harvest in the kitchen sink, laughing as water droplets bounced off the leaves, then pile them high on sandwiches, in scrambled eggs, or blended into green monster smoothies the kids swore made them run faster. Margaret found that eating more greens didn't have to mean giving up her favorite foods. She simply found new ways to add them in. If she were making lasagna, she'd layer in chopped spinach between the noodles and cheese. If she roasted chicken for Sunday's supper, she'd toss a quick side salad with arugula, cherry tomatoes, and a sprinkle of Parmesan. Sometimes she'd sauté kale with garlic and a splash of broth, finishing with a squeeze of lemon for a bright, savory side dish. It didn't take long for Margaret to feel the difference. Within a few weeks, her legs felt less achy after long walks, and she noticed she could stand for longer periods in the kitchen without needing to sit and rest. She even signed up for a gentle yoga class at the senior center, where the instructor complimented her flexibility and balance. Margaret smiled, knowing her garden and her dinner plate were as much a part of her progress as any exercise routine. Beyond strength and balance, leafy greens brought other unexpected benefits. Margaret's doctor explained that these vegetables are loaded with antioxidants, compounds that help fight inflammation and reduce the cellular wear and tear that accelerates aging. While Margaret didn't always understand the science, she did notice that her skin looked brighter and her energy lasted longer throughout the day. She found herself less tempted to nap away the afternoon, and more likely to join her friends for walks or play a game of cards on the porch. Sometimes, Margaret would listen to friends complain about bland, boring diets or the difficulty of eating healthy as they aged. She loved sharing her tips for making greens more appealing: a splash of balsamic vinegar on spinach, a few toasted almonds on kale salad, or a crumble of feta over arugula. She encouraged others to start small, maybe just a handful of greens tossed into soup or scrambled eggs, and to experiment until they found what they liked best. For those who didn't cook, Margaret pointed out that many supermarkets now carry pre-washed bags of baby spinach, kale, and arugula, making it easier than ever to enjoy greens without the hassle. She'd suggest adding a handful to a store-bought rotisserie chicken or mixing greens into ready-made pasta dishes. Even frozen spinach, quickly heated and dressed with a little olive oil, could turn an ordinary meal into a nutritional powerhouse. Not all her friends were convinced at first. Some grumbled that greens tasted bitter or were too much trouble. But Margaret reminded them that taste buds can change with time, and sometimes a new favorite starts as an acquired taste. She'd serve her guests colorful salads with homemade vinaigrettes, often hearing, "I never knew kale could taste this good," or that arugula adds something special. Perhaps the most satisfying part for Margaret was the sense of control that came from caring for her health, one meal at a time. Eating leafy greens was an act of self-respect, a promise to her body that she was still investing in the future, still determined to dance at her grandchildren's weddings and travel to visit her sister in another state. One crisp autumn evening, Margaret prepared a dinner of roasted salmon with a warm spinach and mushroom salad, sprinkled with toasted pecans. As she sat by the window, watching golden leaves drift past, she felt a quiet gratitude for the strength in her legs and the confidence in her step. The changes hadn't happened overnight, but they were real, and they were hers. Her journey was about more than just food. It was about building resilience, cherishing tradition, and finding joy in every stage of life. Leafy greens, it turned out, were more than just plants in her garden. They were the foundation of her strength, the secret to her balance, and a daily reminder that age is not a barrier to living well. So when Margaret's friends asked her a secret, she'd just smile, point to her garden, and say, "Eat your greens." For her, every leaf was a small act of hope, a way to nourish body and soul, and to keep moving forward, one vibrant, green bite at a time. As the sun dipped low and cast a golden light across Margaret's kitchen, she paused for a moment at her window, watching the world settle into evening. The laughter of neighborhood children echoed down the block, and a gentle breeze rustled the garden leaves. Margaret felt something she hadn't felt in years, a deep, steady confidence in her own body. She remembered how uncertain she'd felt at the start of her journey, when every staircase seemed steeper and every ache made her wonder if independence would soon slip away. But day by day, meal by meal, she found new ways to nourish herself, to move a little easier, and to stand a little taller. It wasn't just about eating salmon, savoring a bowl of yogurt, or tossing fresh greens in her salad. It was about taking charge of her own story, refusing to let age define what she could or couldn't do. She realized that even small changes could bring back strength, balance, and the simple pleasures she'd once feared losing. Margaret knew there would always be challenges ahead, but she felt ready for them, armed with the knowledge and habits she'd built along the way. Now, Margaret wants to hear from you. What part of this journey inspired you most? What's one change you'll bring into your own daily life? Share your thoughts below. Your story might encourage someone else who's just starting. If you found these moments meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Together, let's keep supporting one another and celebrate the strength that lives in all of us, no matter our age. Here's to more healthy, happy years ahead. One step, one meal, and one day at a time.